If we want to defeat capitalism, we are going to need a party that will organize working people to fight for the demands that we want and to win socialism. Thank you so much.
Quick point of privilege. Quick point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Guys, first of all, James Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. I just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making it very difficult for me to focus. Please, can we just, I know we're all fresh and ready to go, but can we please just keep the chatter to a minimum? It's affecting my ability to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, is there a speaker against name, chapter, pronoun?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Okay.
So I'm sure you're aware that the Democratic Socialists of America had their national convention recently, and as you saw, it was really, really amusing. But what I find really interesting is that they proposed in advance an open borders resolution, whereas the Democratic Socialists of America members across the country organise on a daily basis for anti-imperialism, immigrant justice, labour rights, eco-socialism, and many other issues with a core belief in solidarity between the workers of the world and an international socialist movement, said the middle-class university-educated leftist. Whereas the DSA is an internationalist socialist organisation, and it recognises that socialists fight to build working-class power for all people, regardless of immigration status or country of residence. Whereas borders serve to undermine the international working class by pitting immigrants and citizen workers in America and foreign American workers against each other in a race to the bottom. Whereas border and immigration enforcement are tools of white supremacy, capitalism and imperialism, whereas borders, their creation, their enforcement, erase the existence and sovereignty of indigenous peoples, borders are and will increasingly be utilised to violently dominate and restrict people's movement as climate change pushes people from their homes. And whereas border and interior immigration enforcement threaten immigrant workers' ability to organise, whereas Jesus Christ, this goes on, right? They think it is some lunatic white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist scheme to have national borders, which is amazing given how most countries aren't even filled with white people and they still have borders as well. So just shocking that this would be the case, but they want to build full international socialism and they think that borders are evil. And so they want them just completely open borders, just completely abandoned. Uninhibited transnational free movement of people into the United States. No one else is agreeing to this. It's just the United States. So as if this won't just be looked at by other powers being like, are they actually going to let us send 50 million Chinese people to the United States? Do you think that communist China might actually use that in some negative way? Wait a minute, what am I saying? Communist China. They're not real communists. You wouldn't support the Chinese as being communists, would you? So no, not even, sorry, capitalist China. Let's call it that, right? Capitalist China. Authoritarian, totalitarian, dictatorial regime is going to literally go, well, have 50 million Chinese people. Oh, look at that. We now control this state and that state and that state. We are now the voting base of the United States. Fuck me. Like, what stops that? What stops anything bad happening? It's just idealistic, dream-worthy nonsense. And they fucking passed it. They fucking passed it. On the second day, DSA votes to endorse open borders and a Green New Deal program at Atlanta Convention. Which, the Green New Deal, by the way, created by, was it Sakiti Chakrabarti or something? The quote is something like, oh, I didn't think about it as being climate change related, really. We saw it as a vehicle for socialism, something like that. And these lunatics actually think that climate change is causing people to flee north. And that's why they're coming to the borders. I mean, none of the migrants are saying anything like that. They're saying, well, we just think we can make more money in America, which they probably can. It's not climate change that is driving these people from their fucking homes. It's just like, these people are insane. They believe insane things, and there are fucking loads of them. Brandon Ramirez said, we unapologetically support free movement for all people. It is unacceptable that a Fortune 500 company can ship a job across a border without consequences while a mother crossing a border to see her child is put into a concentration camp. Well, look, I agree with you that the Fortune 500 corporation having unfettered access to other countries to do just that is also a problem, but that doesn't mean abandon the borders. Like, you are in alliance with the Fortune 500 transnational corporation when you suggest this. As Bernie Sanders said, this is a Koch brothers idea. That's what they want, because that gives them cheap labour. It makes life difficult for all of the immigrants who have arrived, because you've got literally millions of people all competing for the same fucking level of job now. It's not making their life actually any easier, and it's just going to lower the standard for everyone. The more just raw human numbers that come in, the standards get lower. That's just the fact. It's just what happens. Like, you're not saving the third world by doing this. That's not going to save them. It is going to ruin your countries, but it's not going to save theirs. And there are countries outside of Europe, outside of white English-speaking countries, or not even English-speaking, just white countries, that are doing well, and they actually follow a model remarkably similar to ours, and it works. And it's this that we have to export to other people and say, look, define your borders accurately, have an authoritative judicial system, have the rule of law, have protection of private properties, and have a free market. Regulate it where it's needed, but don't go overboard, because otherwise you stop people from prospering. And lo and behold, that's a formula that just produces wealth. It just pours out of this formula. You can't stop it. It's amazing, actually. It's genuinely incredible. And it's really not a very complicated formula either. You know, it's one of those things like, don't be massively corrupt. That's it. You know? And everyone wins. And you, for some reason, want to ruin that with socialism. I have no idea why. We should be exporting that model. We should be projecting that. We should be saying, listen, right? If you have a free, fair, open country, you don't need to worry about people killing you in the night. You know, or at least you need to worry about that less. You don't need to worry about like the rampant mob at your gates, unless you're someone like Emmanuel Macron, who frankly probably deserves it. You know, you can, if you just have an accountable government in a country where it actually is fair elections, the authorities listen to the concerns of the population, then you actually have a peaceful and stable country, because that's how it's meant to be run. Going full open borders is total nonsense. I mean, how do you prevent child trafficking? How do you catch them? How do you know who has trafficked who? You don't know who is in your country because you have no border controls. So how do you stop MS-13? How do you stop gun and drug transfers on either side of the border? Because you've got to remember, there are things that come from America that Mexico doesn't want either. Guns, for a start. Like, that's a real problem, is trafficking guns across the open border to Mexico, where they are used to coerce people into growing drugs, which are then sent back illegally to America. Like, how do you stop any of this? It's so irresponsible to be for open borders. So much suffering comes from this. I mean, look at Libya. As soon as the Libyan government falls, oh, no one's policing the borders. What happens? Slave markets. It's irresponsible to have open borders. The fact that the Democratic Socialists of America have endorsed this, and that's the policy that they're going to advocate for, is amazing, because you've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I think it's Rashida Tlaib, two of the squad at least, who have openly declared themselves to be members of this. So, I mean, that's their policy too. You're not going to hear them speaking out against this, and they'll probably defend this. It's an indefensible proposition. It's utopian nonsense, and it's going to lead to further suffering if it were to be implemented.